Good evening, everyone. I would like to take a few minutes of your time to talk about global warming and climate change, what it is, the cause and effects, and why it is such a big deal. So, we hear about climate change all the time in the news, media, social media, in classes that we take. It's a very big deal. So, what is it? Well, NASA defines climate change as a change in global or regional climate patterns, in particular, a change in increased levels of carbon dioxide. What does that mean? It's specifically talking about the greenhouse effect. Rising levels of carbon dioxide is essentially the greenhouse effect. So what that means is our atmosphere works like a greenhouse, taking in the sun's rays and trapping the heat and then letting the rest out. So the atmosphere is a mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, water vapors, other vapors, carbon dioxide, some minute traces of just random, lots of different random gases, but mostly oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide. There's a natural level of carbon dioxide that is in the atmosphere, which is how we get our temperatures, how we get our warmth. So, because the carbon dioxide absorbs the infrared rays from the sun, it's oxygen doesn't, nitrogen doesn't, only carbon dioxide together absorbs that heat. Otherwise, it would be a very cold planet. So when we have rising levels of that, you're trapping more and more and more heat. So what does that mean exactly? Well, before 1950, the CO2 levels never topped 300 parts per million. That seems like an odd number when you think about it, and in context, it's kind of hard to visualize. But if you look at the current levels of being 440 parts per million, you can see a very large increase in a very short amount of time. And we're just adding more and more and more carbon dioxide. So that number is going to continue to rise. So it's already up over 30% in 70 years. Imagine when it's up over 50%, over 75%. We're going to have a big problem. So the stats say that, according to NASA, the global temperature is up 1.7 degrees Fahrenheit since 1880 on average. And Arctic ice is down 13.3% per decade. So this is just receding over 10% per decade. So eventually all the ice is going to melt and you'll have no ice. This contributes to rising sea levels. So sea level is rising 3.4 millimeters per year. Seems like a very small number, like I said, until you add it up. Over the past 100 years, sea level has risen over 7 inches. So that's 7 inches of shoreline lost. Not to mention throwing off climate patterns. So from the rising sea level, and also the rising temperature of the sea, you get stronger storms, stronger hurricanes, and you have a change in climate patterns. So you're going to see more droughts, more heat waves, longer non-freezing seasons, which means the cycles of agriculture are going to be deeply affected, especially by the droughts and the changing rain. You'll have less rain in some areas, incredibly high levels of rain in other areas. So it's going to wreak havoc on our atmosphere. So why do we talk about it all the time? Well, we are in the industrial age, and the industrial and technology age, where we have combustion engines that run off of fossil fuels. We use gasoline, kerosene, diesel, all different types of fossil fuels to fuel our cars, our planes, our boats. This all contributes to the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So we have been trying, governments have been trying, independent agencies and people have been trying since realizing that this is an issue to cut back on our emissions. You'll see cars now have lower emissions. Governments pass regulations to try to cut emissions. The big question now is with President-elect Donald Trump, who believes that climate change is not real, and that it's not a big problem. So what are his policies going to be in order to combat this? Is it going to potentially get worse if he makes this a non-priority, if he dismantles some of the progress that we've already made, as he is talking about? So whether you really believe it or not, if you look at the science, you can see the actual evidence, and you have to ask yourself, how is this going to impact my future and generations to come?